All right, so back with part two then, right? So just kind of to transition here a little bit, again, looking at this visual, seeing the Brownfield project launched in Atlanta that we call the Atlanta Beltline Project, and you can definitely see the restoration that has taken place, especially on the east side Beltline initially, and now on the west side of the city as well. Of course, this is all part of gentrification in the city of Atlanta, and so what this has in many ways meant for the city is higher property values in these areas, which is an improvement for the city because it means higher tax revenue, but it also means a lot of displaced residents, out of this, neighborhood. In this case, the Old Fourth Ward, where many have lived for a very long time. So something to consider. A couple of other final inner city social problems that need to be mentioned. One of them we talked about a bit in the agricultural unit, but it bears mentioning again here, and that's the issue of food deserts. Yeah, that is a major problem in inner city American neighborhoods. 23.5 million Americans live in food deserts, according to the United States Department of Agriculture. Urban food deserts are, once again, just to refresh your memory, areas that have limited access to fresh and nutritious foods. They're typically found in low income neighborhoods where consumers have little access to medium sized and large grocery stores like a Publix or a Kroger or Whole Foods, and instead have access to small grocery stores filled with mainly processed, energy dense, but nutrient poor food, like the establishment in the photograph here. And consumers in these food deserts are more likely to purchase processed, energy dense, nutrient poor foods because of the lower expense of these foods relative to fresh fruits and vegetables, um, and also to avoid wasting food. In urban areas, obesity rates have increased, and the rate of fruit and vegetable consumption has decreased with increasing distance from grocery stores. There have been a lot of various solutions that have come up to sort of mitigate this problem. Some of my more favorite ones are fresh markets and metro stations. Fresh markets, for example, in Atlanta. Atlanta's got several food deserts, and something that's been done in this city is establishing fresh markets, like basically farmers markets inside MARTA stations that are located in food deserts. Having farmers markets inside MARTA stations once a week, so that's pretty cool. Urban farming is something that we talked about before. You guys saw that on that Detroit footage that we looked at back in the previous unit. If you have not seen this and you have a Netflix account, the Anthony Bourdain, who has recently passed away, had a show on CNN. Man, it's not called No Reservations. That's the Travel Channel show. What was it called? What was it called? Forgive me, looking up. Parts Unknown is the name of the show, and so it's on Netflix, I believe. I think. If not, you might have to consult Amazon. But anyhow, once upon a time on Netflix, they had CNN Parts Unknown. I don't know if it's still on there or not, but the Detroit episode is phenomenal. And you see, urban farming as being one of those answers to food deserts that have emerged in the United States. I love the idea of Lyft, the rideshare company, offering rides for just $2.50 in food deserts, as long as that ride is taking you to a grocery store. That is very, very cool. But this remains, again, an ongoing issue, not only in Atlanta, but really throughout the United States. And then there's the issue of like this permanent underclass that we've seen form as well in American cities, where basically inner city residents are frequently referred to as a permanent underclass because they're trapped in an unending cycle of economic and social problems. They suffer from relatively high rates of unemployment, alcoholism, drug addiction, illiteracy, sometimes juvenile delinquency, crime. Schools are deteriorated. Affordable housing is increasingly difficult to find. So what that does is that just sort of perpetuates a nasty cycle. And if you are a member of the underclass, it's very difficult to compete for jobs because of just the lack of technical skills needed for most jobs. Because unfortunately, fewer than half sometimes in American cities actually complete a high school diploma. And some of these neighborhoods where the permanent residents are labeled as an underclass. The gap between the skills demanded by employers and the training possessed by inner city residents is widening as well. In the past, people with limited education could be factory workers, they could be filing clerks. But today, these jobs require skills in computing and the handling of electronics. And, this requires, skill and education. A lot of times, inner city residents don't even have access to the remaining low skilled jobs, such as custodians and fast food services, because they're increasingly located in the distant suburbs. And if public transportation is not good, that creates an access cutoff. So this is a problem. Inner city residents are trapped oftentimes as a permanent underclass because they live in a culture of poverty. Unfortunately, there's studies of many American cities where 75% of the children in the inner city live and with only one parent. And because of inadequate childcare services, single mothers might be forced to choose between working and staying home to care for their children. Of course, they're going to have to work. And so this, oftentimes leaves, kids in, situations where they spend much of their time at home alone. And unfortunately, only a small percentage of these kids' fathers sometimes are actually tracked down for failing to provide required child care support. So, cycles. Many neighborhoods in the United States as well, it must be mentioned, and we've talked about this before in a previous unit, but it bears repeating, are segregated by ethnicity. And a lot of this is rooted in redlining policies and so on and so forth. Even small cities display strong social distinctions amongst neighborhoods sometimes. A family seeking a new residence usually considers only a handful of districts within the city, wherever the residents' social and financial characteristics sort of match their own. And so, while we might not be thinking along the lines of, purposely segregating, when we do just consider sometimes a handful of districts in a city to live in where the residents' social and financial characteristics are much like ours, that important element of social integration of a city that makes it lively and vibrant and prosperous oftentimes is lost. And so there's not an easy answer to this problem, but always keep in mind that any urban geographer would tell you that the real key to kind of combating a lot of these problems that we've talked about here is social integration as part of the solution, along with sustainable development, right? Where development that meets the needs of the present is there without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So, and that's all part of the sustainable development model that can easily be applied to cities. So, these are some of the problems that are faced, not in the periphery, right, but right here in urban cores. All right, so where are we now? We have basically reached end of unit. There's not really a whole lot left to talk about here. And so test time is around the corner. What is that going to look like? We'll talk about it more maybe tomorrow or let's see, or Monday, depending. Still trying to get some clarification on what's going to, work best here from our administration and from the county. In the meantime, tomorrow you will take a quiz. You'll be given 30 minutes to do it. You'll be put on a 30-minute timer. It's going to be a 33-question quiz. You're going to do it through AP Classroom, okay? So your AP Classroom accounts that you guys all have because you needed it to sign up for national exams, which you've all done, those you'll need to go into AP Classroom and go into your account, and there is where you will find your Unit 6 quiz, but not today. This will be Friday. This is a Friday quiz. This quiz will basically kind of help you to see where you're at. You'll get a grade. It's not necessarily going to affect your overall grade in the class, but it'll give you a good gauge of where you're at. Sorry, getting late. I know I'm pretending it's like 9 o'clock in the morning, but it's really more like 11 o'clock at night, Wednesday, just to kind of lift the veil on when I do most of these recordings. But anyway, we'll keep up to date on this. So, okay, so just to kind of recap then, Quiz Friday, we'll do a review on Monday. We're going to do a review through a Zoom meeting. And so what that means is I will give you an actual time where you can come and participate in a live review with me. And if you are not able to participate in live review because you've got other obligations at that time, there'll be a recording of it made available as well, so you can kind of look back at the review, or at least that's the plan. I believe I've got the tech right on this now, so that is what we'll be doing. Hopefully you guys are doing okay this week. This will be our first of probably several weeks online. We'll continue to make adjustments as we need to make adjustments. I know you guys have a lot of questions. Unless they're specifically about AP Human Geography, I might not have a lot of answers. We're still getting kind of new directives from the county every day, trying to kind of figure things out this week. I think I told you guys last week, I said we're kind of trying to fix a plane while we're flying it right now. So I might not have any answers for you on certain things yet, but that doesn't mean they won't come. We'll just have to be patient, kind of collectively breathe a deep breath, and we'll get this thing figured out for sure as time goes by. Until then, right now we're just trying to learn a little bit more geography, and hopefully this week has gone okay for you in that regard. So little quiz tomorrow, and I will see you for review session on Monday. Probably going to be at about 11 a.m., but I'll give you further clarification of that later. All right, so that's it for today, guys. Have a good one.